this session. So if you consent to the recording, please hang on. So just giving that disclaimer out there as well. And if you can, just try to stay muted while we're going through this virtual lunch and learn so we don't disturb anyone else or the speakers. So my name is Tyler Semder. I am the DCNR internal lead for the South Mountain Partnership Conservation Landscape. I am joined today by our director, Katie Hess, and our program manager, Julia Chain, both of whom you'll probably hear from in a bit. So over our next hour, our crew is going to be providing an overview of our different grant programs to help you decide which program your project would be best fit for and eligible for, and give some tips for crafting a competitive application for either mini grants or flex grants. Before we get rolling, I did want to provide a little context via a quick overview of who we are and what we do. And Julia, thank you. So the South Mountain Partnership is one of the Department of Conservation and Natural Resources 8 conservation landscapes across the Commonwealth. So though DCNR is 30 years old this year, our conservation landscape program is about 20 years old, 21 years old. And though we have 8 of these conservation landscapes across the Commonwealth, even though they're all a lot different, they all share a lot of features in common as well. So for our conservation landscape program, almost all of them are built around a core of public lands. So for the South Mountain Partnership, which you can see the purple arrow pointing to in York, Cumberland, Franklin, and Adams County, our core of public lands is Michoud State Forest. All of our conservation landscapes usually have a strong sense of place. They have a broad and unique range of social, economic, natural, recreation, and agricultural resources. And number 4 there, this is kind of the glue that pulls all the pieces together. Very active and engaged partners, people, organizations, individuals, and institutions, a lot like who might be on this call today. Julie, if you want to flip the next slide. So the South Mountain Partnership, who are we? What role do we fill? Even though we are a conservation landscape, we refer to ourselves as a conservation network, meaning we're a convener of a broad range of partners and institutions and organizations and individuals. But we also do a lot of different things. We wear a great many hats. We're facilitators, resource finders, project people connectors, educators, information sharers, researchers, regional thinkers, and funding allocators. And I think that's a great segue to flip it over to Julia for the rest of our grant program overview. So thank you and have a great day all.
All right, thank you, Tyler, for that wonderful introduction. Tyler is a really critical part of our team, and I'm glad you got to hear from him. So to start us off, if you'd like, put in the chat your name if you want to share, and an emoji that aligns if you're here to hear about a specific grant. If you know right now you're here about mini grants, a smiley face, flex grants, a heart, research grants, a brain, which might be hard to find in the first place. And then if you don't know why you're here yet, you're here to learn, a little cool face with some sunglasses. And feel free to share your name too, or where you're from if you'd like. We're really glad you're here today. So today we're going to be talking about our 3 grant programs, and I like to think of things in the who, what, where, why, how, and when framework. And so we'll be talking about each of our programs together in this range, and then I'm going to move into mini grants specifically in the second half of the application, or in the second half of this presentation, as the applications are due here on April 30th, so they might be front of mind for some folks. Let's first start with our why. Why does the South Mountain Partnership want to grant funds out to our community? Here's a couple of our whys. We love the work that our partners do, and we want to support it. There's amazing work happening. The South Mountain Partnership is a collaboration of over 60 partners and more. We're always adding. So if at the end of this presentation you're interested in becoming a partner, let us know. But we want to support that work. We've created shared goals in the state of the region, which I'll tell you a little bit more about later in our presentation, but this is a publication that was published in 2023 that's really the guiding research of our work right now. We also know that improving our environment and working toward conservation goals increases the quality of life for everyone, and we want this to be a great place to live. We want to support students and land managers for our research grant programs. And we also know that there's not a lot of grants available for conservation in our region, especially for smaller projects. Finally, we know that these investments move us towards a better and brighter future together. So first, we'll start talking about how our 3 grant programs are funded. And I've organized that presentation to show each grant program together. And I apologize, it's a little bit text heavy, but I kind of wanted this to be a reference document afterwards. We are recording this, and I'll also share these slides. So our mini grant program is funded through the DCNR Community Partnerships Grant Program. So we receive this funds from DCNR, and then we re-grant it out through our mini grant. Our flex grants, comparatively, are funded by private donations. So we have a Friends of Southbound partnership hosted by the Foundation for Enhancing Communities, or TFEC, and donations to TFEC in our name are put towards these flex grants. And that means that that program can be a little bit more flexible, as is in the name, and you'll learn about that throughout the presentation. We also offer research grants funded through our DCNR funds, which again are passed through the Appalachian Trail Conservancy. The South Mountain Partnership is a collaboration between the Appalachian Trail Conservancy and DCNR. So when you work with us, the South Mountain Partnership is an initiative of the Appalachian Trail Conservancy. Now, who is eligible to apply for our grants? Our mini grants are open to municipalities, 501c3 nonprofits, and educational institutions. Our flex grants are open to everyone, no caveat. The research grants are open to educational institutions and student partnerships. So the research grants are applied for from a university, but involve a team of students and professors. I also added a little bonus of where on this slide. All grants that apply to any of our programs have to be within our 4-county region, so Adams, Cumberland, Franklin, and York County. Now, what do these grants fund? Our mini grants are our flagship and longest standing grants, and also our largest grants. They traditionally are from $2,500 to $15,000, though we have a caveat for special projects to go up to $25,000. This would be for really high impact cross-regional projects. There's more information about that in our packet. We also offer these grants for grassroots conservation projects, preservation, promotion, and they require a 1-to-1 match. The flex grants are small. They're $1,000 to $2,000. They're for small projects that meet an immediate need in a community or help all of our communities access the South Mountain region, and there's no match required. Our research grants are up to $5,000, and those are for projects that help address the South Mountain's regional research priorities and also require a match. And Katie added in the chat, important note, that the mini grants are also open to, in addition to municipalities, they're open to county government as well, and other local government organizations. When do you apply? Our mini grants are due very shortly. The pre-application is due April 30th. The pre-application is very straightforward, and then there's a larger application due later. And those projects would begin in September of 2025, the end of this year, and have until the end of next year to finish. Our flex grants are due June 27th. And at the end of this meeting, the flex grants are going to be live, and I'll be publishing them to our website. So if you're interested in flex grants, at the end of this meeting, get on our website and check out. The new grant packet is just about ready to be uploaded. And those projects also have a grant period of September of 2025 through December 2026. And then research grants are a bit more flexible in an effort to align well with the semester nature of the college experience. So we have rolling deadlines on January 3rd, June 6th, and September 5th. We award these very quickly within 2 weeks after application. And then all projects in this year must be finished by the end of the year. And then these deadlines, one question you may have is how much change is there year to year in our grants? You can generally count on these application periods staying about the same every year. So if you're ready to apply, our website offers information on each of these 3 grant programs. They each have a packet of information that you would use to learn more about the grant. And then within that packet is a virtual portal to apply. Each of these grants are submitted virtually. You can also contact me with any questions. I'm happy to talk through ideas about grants and discuss more intricate details that you might have about your project. And we're also going to have opportunity for questions at the end of this call today. All right, we're going to dig into mini grants next, but I'm just going to pause really quickly to see if there's any questions about sort of this high-level overview of the grants that we offer. All right. So I wanted to talk specifically about our mini grant program. We offer a pre-application that is due April 30th. The pre-application is essentially several paragraphs of writing to ascertain whether your project is eligible for our program. And so I wanted to kind of speak specifically to that. But before I dig in, Wendy asked in the chat if there's a limit to a number of times an organization can apply or be awarded a grant. It's a great question, Wendy. We're really glad to support our partners in our grant program, and there is not a limit to a number of years that you can apply. But our grant programs right now, you cannot apply for the same project for a mini grant and a flex grant together. So that would be the only limitation. We also do ask if you're a new grant recipient as part of our mini grants. So it's something that our grant review committee does review because we want to try to bring new folks in, but there is no limit on, applying multiple years in a row. Hopefully that helps. All right, so my first tip for putting together a really good grant application is thinking about the South Mountain Partnership's goals and priorities. So the South Mountain Partnership seeks to protect 4 landscape resources. And when I like to joke when I think of landscape conservation, I think if you opened up your door, everything that you could see around you is a landscape resource. We're interested in all of it. So that includes the natural portions of the landscape. This could be plants, trees, water, healthy streams, all sorts of benefits that you see in the natural environment. We support cultural resources. So these are historic or cultural or archaeology resources that exist either prehistory or even as recent as, in the last 50 years history. We support agricultural resources, farms, farmland conservation, food access, farm stands, and recreational resources. These are our trails and ways that we get outside and spend time together. But when we combine these resources, we call it a nexus project. So my biggest tip in putting together your application is your application may clearly fall into one of these 4 categories. For example, let's say you have a riparian buffer project. It's clearly helping the natural resources around that stream. However, if you can address your project to more than one, and maybe even all 4 of these projects, that is where a really strong mini grant application comes. So in that same riparian buffer project, you might be working on planting natives and stabilizing the stream, but you could also put signs up to talk about how the stream fit alongside an agricultural resource. Or you could offer fly fishing instructions along the creek. Or you could talk about a cultural resource that's nearby that stream, which we'll talk about here in a second in our case example. So anytime you're thinking about one of these landscape resources, consider an opportunity to say, okay, I know that my project fits really well in one or two of these aspects, but how can I think more broadly and more holistically about how my project can talk about all four of these? And sometimes it doesn't work, and a strong project can hit, just two of these, for example. But we really encourage you to be as creative as possible, to think about how your project can grow and tell the full story of the South Mountain, because we know all four of these resources are very strong in our region, and they all work together to create a place that we all love and call home. So one case study, I wanted to talk about a recent mini grant that did this really well. Cultural and historic resources are sometimes a hard fit for a conservation grant program. And so I wanted to share a little bit about how the Heishman Mill, here pictured in Newville, Cumberland County, received a grant for the preservation and interpretive plan for the mill. So you might think, well, this is only a cultural resource. But this mill, if you zoomed out in my picture, which unfortunately you can't, is along the stream, and they have just invested in inputs and outputs for paddlers, kayakers, and space for music and hanging out and fishing, including an accessible parking and fishing pad. So we know that they have a stream, they have a beautiful fish bypass and dam on this site, and they want the building to complement the natural resources that they have. So they've already preserved their natural resources well. They're looking for their cultural resources to talk about both those natural resources and the agricultural function of the mill. And then finally, we know that recreation happens on that site because it's an input and an output for kayakers, and it's along a water trail. So this is kind of an example of how what appears at the surface to just be a historic resource can have this really broad impact and tell us a whole big story about the site. This is a very neat place if you haven't had a chance to drive by. All right, continuing tip one on understanding our goals and priorities is our State of the Region project. So in 2023, we published the State of the Region report card. And far before we published the report card, we'd been working on this project. And through the leadership of our 4 counties, we developed a report card to understand the health of our region and to figure out exactly where we were at and what we could do to do better. If you wouldn't mind checking your mic, it sounds like we have someone who might be unmuted. Thank you. And our State of the Region not only put out this report card, but it also put out a final report and an action plan. The final report includes more than 65 recommendations that would help improve the health of our region. And then the action plan talks about our top 5 partnership projects that we plan to take on as a coalition of partners. And so understanding the State of the Region research and recommendations is a great way to align your project. And the good news is it's a really comprehensive report, and I'm confident that you can see your project in the State of the Region. So we started the State of the Region by understanding what our regional challenges were. So you can read through that and kind of understand how your project might help a regional challenge. And then after you've read through, you can select which tier in a mini grant application your project would align with. So the first tier is projects that directly advance the State of the Region action plan top 5 partnership priorities. And these are all outlined in the application in more detail. Tier 2 are projects that support one of the 65 plus recommendations. And tier 3 are projects that do not directly support the first 2, but they fall within the program goals and purpose. And the good news is I'm confident you all are in one of these tiers. We just want you to think about where your project fits into the State of the Region. And don't worry, it's not that you have to be in the first tier or the second tier to be selected. It's just a way for us to kind of understand how you as partners out there are helping to advance and improve the health of our region. So one example of a project that aligned really well with our State of the Region priorities from our last year's application is we received an application from Lemoyne Borough and Cumberland County to advance a trail, essentially the northern terminus of the Cumberland Valley Rail Trail that would start in Lemoyne and move here west towards Cumberland, the rest of Cumberland County. So this is a planning project to align the section of trail, hopefully with an active and interested rail line that is interested in participating. And so this project is just getting started, but in our top 5 partnership priorities, we have an interest in a regional trail coalition and a regional trail system. So this project is expanding regional trails and creating connections eventually between Cumberland County and the more eastern and northern Cumberland County section. So it was a really exciting one to come through and something we were really excited to support. So if you want to learn more about this, there's links in our application to dig in and explore each of these recommendations. All right, so now for my second tip, getting deep into the finances. Understanding how your project budget would work is a great first step in understanding your concept. What kinds of costs do you need help funding through a grant, and how can you match them? So if you harken back to the sort of intro set of our publication here, we know that mini grants require a 1-to-1 match, and our program in the flex grants does not require a match. So just for these mini grants, we're talking about this 1-to-1 match. So you want to think about where you've got your budget and where you need and where you can match. So our first category of eligible costs includes professional services. So if you're paying someone to work on your project, or you and your organization are going to use your own staff time towards creating a specific project. Now, this can be a little tricky with staff time. I want to be clear that our grants can't just pay for your regular programming, but what they can do is help bring out new programs or create capacity that wasn't there before in a new project, rather than just your sort of regular activities. We also know that direct costs are eligible, so this would be items that are either crucial for your project to be completed, or items that would allow your project to happen. The eligible match is very flexible. So the first category here is cash. So these are funds that you have in hand, either as an organization or other grants that you've received. And at the time of application, your match will be asked if it's secure or pending. So having as much of your match secure increases the competitiveness, of your project. So a secure match is something that you already know that you're having, whereas an unsecure match might be a grant that you've also applied for at the same time. You can also count volunteer time. We use the Internal Revenue Service's value of volunteer time, which right now is about $33 an hour. So that does add up. And we also offer match through donated costs or professional services. So let's say someone's going to be coming and working on your project, and they're going to donate, $2,000 of their services. That can count towards your match. All right, I see we have a couple questions in the chat. Let me catch up quick.
Yeah, Julia, if you want, I can read them so that you don't have to.
Sure, thank you.
Find them. The first question, thank you, Jeff, for submitting. We list 4 counties as eligible, but Tyler's map showed that we actually have a slightly more distinct boundary that doesn't include all parts of those 4 counties. And so the question is eligibility truly the entire county, or must the project be within our our mapped core boundary? And I know this is a tricky question.
Yeah, thank you, Katie. And thanks, Jeff. It is truly the 4-county region that is eligible. So your project can occur anywhere across the 4 counties, but we do consider prioritization in our core region, and we also consider impact. So, for example, let's say your project would be happening in York City, but impacts Northern York. That's a great example of a project that probably would still be a good idea, and all counties are eligible to apply.
Thank you, Julia. The next
And
question.
we had a question before, Jeff, too, from Wendy Smith. Did you catch that one, Katie?
I thought Julia addressed that one.
Oh, okay. Yeah, there's the question of, is there a limit to a number of times an organization can apply for or be awarded a grant? And also from Jessica Miller asked, can we apply for more than one flex grant a year? So I don't know if, Julie, if you wanted to give that a quick answer to that.
Yeah, so the one major rule that we have is that a mini grant and a flex grant cannot be awarded towards the same project. And all of our grant programs are very competitive, just as kind of a heads up. So we do look at applications at the same time for flex grants and mini grants, so we know kind of what is coming through in each category. So that's how we can make sure that we don't award to the same project in an effort to get more money across the region. Jeff, your question about can you apply for more than one flex grant each year? I actually don't have an answer to that. I don't see why not. I want to underline again the competitiveness, and I would probably keep it to maybe 2 proposals if you were going to apply for more than one. I think it would be unlikely that the committee would select to apply one recipient would receive more than one grant. But the flex grants are pretty flexible, and we haven't made that a rule one way or the other. So I'd say you may try, but I wouldn't do more than 2.
Julia, there are a few more very specific questions related to fringe benefits being associated with staff salary. Are those considered to be eligible costs, as well as travel costs for projects?
Yeah, absolutely. So, and I also see Jess is clarifying. So on the multiple flex grants for multiple projects, yes, I'd say maybe up to 2 projects, but I would guess you would only likely to ever be awarded 1 flex grant in a year just because of our competitiveness of the program. So I would probably put your best idea forward, and if you want to talk about what that is, I'd be happy to. Or if you want to put 2 ideas forward, I'm more than open to that. Travel costs can be an eligible cost. So yes, Natalie. And Valerie, let's talk more maybe offline about fringe benefits. We can accommodate a small percentage of those, but we have some rules from DCNR about exactly how much. All right, any other budget related questions? I'll keep talking about it and I'll check the chat here in a second. So just understanding the picture of your financials is a really great way to come into the mini grant process prepared, knowing what you need money for and how we can match it. And I'm happy to talk about how we could look at a match. We tend to have the most competitive applications have a portion of their match in cash, but the in-kind match is a really helpful portion. The other thing I want to make sure I underline is what a 1-to-1 ratio of match means. So this is pretty simple. If you're applying for $10,000, it means you need to show an equal amount of match. So you'd apply for $10,000, you'd need $10,000 in match with a $20,000 total project cost. Same for if you had $5,000 and it would match. As a reminder, our flex grants require no match, so that makes them a little bit more flexible. All right, moving into my third tip. So planning for partnership. This is another thing that we really stress through our application process and our scoring and prioritization. We really want your project to not happen in a vacuum. We'd really like to see you work with appropriate partners. So this is a really good thing to start thinking about early. If you have an idea who's going to benefit from your idea and who's also interested in it. What other organizations do you work with that you think could be lifted up together through your project, or would be interested in the results of your project? So I think the best way to talk about this is through examples. So I'll bring up a mini grant program from 2023 that just concluded that was an incredible lift of partnership. So the Shippensburg University applied for creating a guide to preserving historic resources in the South Mountain region. But I included this little screenshot of their final report because I wanted you to see how many people were involved in this guide. Shippensburg University did not do this on their own. They involved every level of interested parties. So they had local scholars and historic preservation consultants. They had their Cumberland County Planning Department and the Cumberland County Historical Society. They had their state organization, the Pennsylvania SHPO, or the Historical and Museum Commission. And through each scale, so hyperlocal, county, and state, they managed to produce a report and a series of learning activities, webinars, and videos all about preserving historic places. And I think that this scaled idea of understanding who can participate in your grant and how it can make it work, it often makes it more complicated. I think we're all probably aware that the more people you bring into something, it does get a little bit complicated, but it can have incredible results. And we really want you to consider that. We're all about partnership, and we know that we can't go at anything alone. We're going through all of our projects through the support of our partners, and we'd like you to do the same. So in this early stage where you're planning your project, think about who could come along with you. And better yet, can they help contribute to your budget at all? Can they provide match? Could they fund any portion of it? That's not required, but again, it makes a really nice and strong application. All right, so I just want to take a step back and go through the timeline of our mini grant. So as we've been talking about, the pre-application is due at the end of this month, April 30th. The short form that basically says you're interested in applying. If you have any interest, I highly encourage you to submit the pre-application. You can always make modifications or pull out if necessary before this final application deadline. So once the pre-applications are received, myself and our DCNR colleagues go through and make sure that all of the ideas are eligible and there aren't any issues with your application. And so as long as your project is eligible, we invite you to apply by June 27th. So the final application is a longer process, but I'm here as a support system. Our grant programs are not intended to be a barrier to you submitting. So we help explain our application questions, can help give feedback on making your project more competitive if you're interested. And then you would submit that application by the end of June. We convene a third-party review committee. So every year, this is a different set of people and organizations that are not involved in the applicants. And so every year it kind of changes just to make sure that they have no conflict of interest, but they do represent the variety of landscape resources and the variety of places in our region. This is a really fun thing. If you don't actually end up applying this year and you're interested in serving on our committee, let me know, because it's a great way to learn about projects going on in our region and how to write a competitive application, because you're going to be in the driver's seat of reviewing. The third-party committee reads all applications, scores them, and then we meet. So those scores are the beginning of our conversation, but we also discuss, benefits and pros and cons of each project and the best way to allocate our funds. A question we also often receive is if we ever award less than the application. Like, I would always encourage folks to apply for what they need. And at times, given the limited amount of funds we have, you may receive less than what you ask for, but we also try to look at budgets really carefully and never offer so little of a grant that you wouldn't be able to do your project that you applied for. Then once applications have been reviewed, scored, and selected, we'll make official decisions by August and let you know. We'll then move really quickly into contracting, and the project can start as soon as September 2025. And again, the project has until November or December of 2026 to finish, with closeout materials due by the end of December 2026. We're also going to be celebrating our grant awards at our Power of the Partnership, September 12th. So please mark your calendars for that and join us. And those of you who are on the call interested in the Flex grant, just to let you know sort of what of this timeline applies to you, Flex grants don't have a pre-application process. So they kind of join into this right at the final application deadline. And then all the process is the same for Flex grants. That third-party committee also reviews our Flex grants. I see we have a question in the chat of what percentage of applications normally receive grants. This is different every year, but our mini grants usually request funding of at least double what we have to offer. And our mini grants receive at least double, and our flex grants are receiving sometimes triple or more than that. So they've been very popular in the last couple of years. But we are working to increase funding for our flex grants because we understand that the need is high. All right, that takes us to the end of my planned remarks, and I wanted to make sure that I left a lot of time for questions. So feel free to come online and ask any questions. Feel free to unmute yourself or put it in the chat, whatever you're most comfortable with.
Julia, one question that I've been asked many times is, and maybe you mentioned this, but can I match this with a different DCNR grant?
Oh, that's a great question. And no, I did not mention that. So our grants, the only other grant you cannot match it to is other DCNR funds. So talk to me if that is a problem and you want to brainstorm other grants, but there are other grants through the county level. You're also eligible to match with state funds, visitors bureaus. There's some other programs in our region that align well as match sources.
Another question that I often receive is, where can I go to learn about more funding opportunities?
Also a great question. On our website, we have a list of grants that are available in our region. I will just go ahead and show that to you. So if you go to our website and regional funding opportunities, you can read through grants that we're aware of in the region that might apply to you. And if you notice one's missing or you have a suggestion, let us know. We try to keep this updated, but it's a big list, so we're always looking for more options. Also, while I'm on the website, I'll just show you navigation to our grants. So our work and our grants, there's information for each grant, and each grant has a packet that you can download to learn more. So if you're interested in our mini grants, for example, while my computer wakes up, we have a packet that goes over in detail all the things I shared with you today and gives you access to the full application and past projects, frequently asked questions. And thanks for putting that in the chat, Tyler.
It looks like we have someone who is interested in serving on the grant review committee. Thanks,
Awesome.
Jessica.
Thanks, Jess. Yeah, very happy. Gonna stop sharing so I can see your faces. I've been looking at my PowerPoint only. All right. Well, I will be sharing via email the recording of this call and the PowerPoint of the slide or a PDF of the PowerPoint for your reference. And please consider phoning me, emailing me with any future questions about our grant program. I really hope to see a project come through from your organization.
Yeah. And I want to thank Julia for putting this together. She did a fabulous job, as I think you will all agree. Super helpful. And like she said, everyone will be receiving a follow-up email through the email that you use to register for this event. And reach out to any of us anytime. We really appreciate the work that all of you are doing and seek to support it in whatever way we can.
Thanks, Julia. Thanks, Tyler.